Have you ever felt you weren't good enough no matter what you do? Have you ever twisted yourself like a pretzel trying to get the approval of others? Have you ever stayed in relationships that don't work because you're terrified of being abandoned? Well, if you've answered yes to any of these questions, you may be thinking that there's something wrong with you, that you're crazy. But it's also possible that these problem behaviors are the result of growing up in an alcoholic family. So in this video, I'm going to share with you some questions you can ask yourself to determine whether you grew up in an alcoholic family, so you can see how these ended up being learned behaviors that you use to cope with growing up in a challenging childhood. I'm also going to provide some information on really helpful resources that can make a huge difference in the quality of your life. Now is always the time to start making positive changes in your life. Hi, Dr. Donna Leigh Bliss here. On this channel, I promote optimal mental health and well-being to help you become the best version of yourself. Please help me to grow this channel by hitting the subscribe button. Who we are as adults is greatly influenced by the world we grew up in. If we grew up in a childhood that was relatively stable, our parents were responsible, they were emotionally responsive, they were good at meeting our needs, then we grew up probably feeling good about ourselves, feeling good about the world, and feeling more hope-filled. But for people who grew up in families that are emotionally unstable, such as families with alcoholism, they grew up feeling afraid, being filled of fear and shame and not feeling like they belong. And the problem is that those behaviors carry into adulthood. And so people struggle with wondering why they don't feel good about themselves. Why did they find the need to people please? Why is it they stay in bad relationships or avoid relationships altogether because they're terrified of being abandoned? So one of the things that's important to understand is that many of these behaviors are actually learned. When children grow up in dysfunctional families, to use a generic term, love is conditional. There can be a lot of emotional instability, especially if parents have problems with alcoholism. People will talk about how it felt like they were walking on eggshells growing up. Well, the challenge is as a child, you're powerless, yet you're dependent on your parents. So how do you cope living in an unstable relationship where the people that are supposed to be taking care of you may be impaired because of a problem with alcohol? And so what happens is we learn certain styles, ways of coping with that stress, and we don't even know we're learning it. But these roles, such as being a people pleaser or feeling the need to be perfect, are something that we continue into adulthood. So the concept of adult children of alcoholics originated in the late 1970s. These were members of a group called Al-Anon, which is an offshoot of the group Al-Anon, which is a support group for family members and friends of alcoholics who realized that they had certain characteristics from growing up in an alcoholic family. And so they ended up creating their own group that started to focus on those characteristics and how they could recover from them. So the original focus of adult children of alcoholics was literally on adults that grew up in alcoholic families. But as more and more people related to the characteristics, but yet didn't have parental alcoholism growing up, the concept spread to include dysfunctional families very broadly. And so those can be families characterized by workaholism, perfectionism, very rigid religious beliefs, mental illness problems, drug addiction. So it's not just alcoholism. And so these characteristics are learned behaviors that children learn as a way of trying to cope with the stress and uncertainty of the childhood they grew up in, and they carry them into adulthood. And so the program evolved to help people start to recover on that, and more people started to identify. And now adult children of alcoholics is recognized as a thing, as something that impacts people, that people can recover from. So as you're listening to me talk about some of these characteristics, you may be relating to them, And you may say, yeah, I know I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. My father was an alcoholic. Or you may not be sure if you are. So how can you tell? Or what are some guidelines you can use to help you determine if you're an adult child of an alcoholic? Well, here are some questions that members of adult children of alcoholics created to help other people ask themselves to help clarify that question. 1. Do I fear authority figures and angry people? 2. Do I see most forms of criticism as a personal attack? 3. Do I have difficulty identifying feelings? 4. Do I involve myself in the problems of others? Do I feel more alive when there is a crisis? 5. Do I judge myself without mercy and guess at what is normal? 6. Do I recall anyone at my home drinking or taking drugs or being involved in some other behavior that I now believe could be dysfunctional? 7. Did one of my parents make excuses for the other parent's drinking or other behaviors? And 8. As an adult, do I feel immature? Do I feel like I'm a child inside? So if you answered yes to any of these questions, you may have grown up in an alcoholic or dysfunctional family and not realize it. And so what's important then is to get more information, to learn about what some of these characteristics are, how they've impacted you, but more importantly, how you can get help. First, therapy can be very, very helpful in addressing unresolved issues from growing up in an alcoholic or dysfunctional family. So if you're in therapy, I would talk to your therapist about it. If you're thinking about therapy, when you talk with a therapist initially, ask them their experience in dealing with adult children of alcoholics issues. There are also support groups you can attend. Similar to Alcoholics Anonymous, there is a group called Adult Children of Alcoholics, and it is a 12-step support group that focuses on recovering from the negative impact of growing up in an alcoholic or dysfunctional home. I have many clients that work that program, and they've talked about how it is a game changer in terms of addressing problems they've had in adulthood for a long, long time that finally are starting to get better. Now, for some that may not like the spiritual focus of adult children of alcoholics, there's also a We Agnostics Adult Children of Alcoholics group that you can attend. It's very similar, but it doesn't focus on spirituality or a higher power, so you might find that helpful too. I've included links to both of the websites in the description below, and I really encourage you to check them out. There's literature you can get, pamphlets you can download. You can learn lots and lots about adult children of alcoholics. There's also meetings you can attend in person, but you can also attend them online. You can be anonymous. You don't have to be on camera. And many times listening to other people talk about their experiences is a great way to see if you relate to them and whether these support groups would be helpful for you. So please check them out. Growing up in an alcoholic or dysfunctional family is hard enough when you're a child, but to have the negative effects carry over into your adulthood and be plagued by self-limiting beliefs about yourself, not feeling that you're good enough, that you're lovable enough, not feeling that you belong, being terrified that you're being abandoned is a terrible way to live. The good news is that you don't have to. So please check out the websites. Talk to a therapist. There's lots and lots of hope available, and you don't have to live the way you've been living anymore. So I strongly encourage you to check out the resources and take the first steps to feeling really good about yourself and your life, maybe for the first time. Thank you for watching this video. I've included some helpful links in the description below. If you like this video, please click on the subscribe button so you can be notified when I release other videos that help promote optimal mental health and well-being. Finally, I've included some links for other videos you might find helpful. Remember, now is always the time to start making positive changes in your life. I'll see you next time.